Welcome back for part 2 of the shower valve installation. Okay, so the hot water is done for the shower valve, and what I'm going to move on to now is the cold water. So I started to kind of mock this up. You can see right there, got a short pipe on there with an elbow. So before I talk about that, what I'm going to talk about is how I'm going to tie into this line down here for the cold water. Alright, so here's our cold water line that's capped off right now. So I'm going to tie into that with this short run of pipe here. So I've cut this a little bit long, just in case I need to cut this cap. I don't think I'm going to be able to solder this off easily, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off. And then I can also cut this back a little bit. And then what I'll do is run a coupling with a stop in between these two pipes here. That'll go to this T here. This is where our shutoff for the toilet is going to be. And then we'll run some piping over that way. I'll talk about that later on. Most likely I'm going to go ahead and solder the T and this short pipe here together on a bench. And then I'll come in the bathroom and solder everything up in place here. Alright, so we're ready to go here. I've cleaned the pipe and I've put on the flux. I also crimped this part of the T here because this was sagging pretty badly. I want to make sure this is nice and straight. So I crimped this and I twisted the pipe so that it's nice and firm in there. And I did the same thing here. I'm going to put a cap on the end, so I'll do that last. I'll come back to that. This pipe is simply for support purposes because I want to have, I've got these two blocks here set up. So that's all that pipe is there for. This is not permanent. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and solder on the cap next. And just like what I did with these, the T here, I took my pliers, crimped the cap, and then twisted it so it's nice and firm on there. So again, light pressure, not too hard. You don't want to make the pipe too much out of round. So I'll go ahead and solder this on now. Okay, so let's talk about the cold water line installation. So the first thing I did here was I put in a block to support the drop ear that's going to go in. So that's going to go in like that. See that there? We'll talk about this later on when we get to that stage. And then I also wanted to support this water line at the same time. So basically how I position this block is there's our 6-inch mark right there for our tub spout. And I just pretty much centered this block vertically on that line. In terms of depth, I measured from this block to this inlet here on the shower valve. That's 11/16. Then I positioned this block 11/16 forward of the top block. I also took my level and made sure this is nice and plumb, which it is. You can't see it, but it is. And then I just sunk 4 screws in here. Those are 3-inch exterior screws to set this in place. Now in terms of the water line, so I've got a short run of pipe coming off this valve, an elbow, and a long run of pipe. This is actually longer than I need it to be, but I can actually trim it later. So I prefer to have it long than have it short. Got a strap here to support this pipe. That's just attached with 2 1.5-inch exterior wood screws. And I also wanted to make sure this pipe is nice and plumb. So I have my level here. Put that on there. You can see it's nice and plumb. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I've got the T with our toilet stub out right there. Our short run of pipe that's going to connect up to our cold water line. And before I attach our cold water line to this run of pipe here, what I want to do is solder on this pipe that's going to go through this wall stud. Because what's going to happen is this T is going to be really close to the stud. So I have the opportunity right now to go ahead and solder this up right in this open stud bay here. Alright, so before I solder up this copper, the one thing I wanted to do is make sure that the stub-out's positioned correctly. So we're most likely going to go with a Kohler toilet because we have a Kohler tub, and that will have a better chance of having the finishes match up, since the whites are kind of sometimes a little bit different depending on the manufacturer. So what that means is that I looked at several Kohler toilets, and the positioning of the shutoffs that they recommend in the specifications is anywhere from 4.5 inches to 6 inches, depending on the Kohler toilet you look at. So I just basically looked at this here, and the center point of our drain over to here is around 5.25 inches. So what I'm just going to go ahead and do is attach this stub out to the wall like that. And I think any toilet that I put in here that's a Kohler toilet should work out just fine. What I'm going to probably put on the end of that, later on you'll see that, is I'm probably going to put a shutoff that has a lever on it anyway. I'm not going to put one that has a dial where you have to turn it to close the valve. So that'll make it a lot easier, and I can pretty much place this wherever I want to within reason. So that's my thought on that. Alright, so I'm under the counter here, so hopefully the echo's not too bad, but what I'm working on right now is transitioning from this pipe here to the pipe that's coming vertical off the valve. The pipe's going to be carried over that way, and then it's going to meet up with this pipe and go up the wall. The first thing I want to do is measure the distance between the wall and this pipe, and it's around, looks like about 2 13/16. And what I'll do is transfer that measurement over to this pipe here. And when I do that, what I'm doing is basically setting myself up for where this side of the elbow needs to go. So it'll be right on that 2 13/16 mark. It's a 90-degree elbow. More or less, I need to cut the pipe at that 2 13/16 mark. Alright, so what I'm doing right now is figuring out where the elbow needs to go on this vertical pipe so that it carries the pipe horizontally back over to the pipe that's in the wall. So what I probably should have done is left the pipe on that I had extended out here. Then I could have used my torpedo level, set it up against there, and then figured out exactly where I needed to mark on this pipe to make a cut. So since I didn't do that, what I ended up doing was taking a sleeve. So this is a sleeve without a stop in it. And I put my torpedo level on the underside of this elbow. And then I slid the sleeve up and down until this was nice and level. And that told me exactly where this elbow is going to go here. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that off and make a cut. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the way that looks there. Now the copper pipe does have a little bit of flex in it, so if you don't get your measurements exactly right, you can flex it and be able to line everything up. So what I'm going to do now is actually go ahead and start soldering this whole run of copper pipe up. And I'm going to start with the valve first. So I'll see you over there. Alright, so I have cleaned and flexed this joint here. I haven't done anything to the rest of this pipe because this is pretty close and I'm worried about the flux running out of this joint here. So I'm going to get this done first. I just have the pipe in place to hold this steady, and then I'll come back and do the rest of the joints. This joint up here is done, and this one's done here. They look pretty good. I checked them with a mirror just to make sure. And it looks like these 4 joints here are all good too. So I'm going to turn the water back on, and I don't think we're going to have any problems with any leaks or anything like that. It looks like the joints are just fine. So just one thing, of course, I remember to put the stops back in, and also to turn the screws in so that we don't have water coming out of the valve. So that's it. Alright, so what I'm doing right now is putting in the tub spout drop here. So pull this off here. You can see I have a line that I drew for making sure this is nice and lined up with the center of the overflow. So that looks good. I'm just going to go ahead and solder this up, and then I'll move on to the shower head next. Alright, so what I wanted to do is mock up our configuration here. So we've got our tub spout with the diverter. So when you pull that, it sends the water up here to the shower head, which is, we've got the drop here mounted on the block here now. And then we've got the arm coming out of the wall, and then our shower head here. We recently decided we also want to add a handheld on a slider. So you can see that here. And that introduces a little more complication into the equation. And we'd have to have somewhere for this hose to attach. So they make these outlets like this. And you have a little cover here, so you can attach your hose to that outlet. The problem with that is you also have to install a separate valve in the wall so you can control whether the water goes to your shower head or to your handheld. In order to install that valve, it was about another $220. And I've already spent quite a bit of money on this project, and we still haven't even finished the bathroom. Another option would be to go with a shower diverter like this. How that works, it would go on the end of your shower arm here. Then you'd have your shower head on this end, and you could run your hose for your handheld right off of this end. And this controls which of these items gets the flow of water. So this was only $20, and that's what I'm thinking I'm going to go with. I haven't really quite decided on that yet, but I'm about 90% sure this is what I'm going to do. The last thing I did was to flush out the valve before reinstalling the cartridge. With the water turned back on to the house, I slowly opened each of the shutoffs at the shower valve one at a time and let the water run for about 15 seconds. Since I don't have the tub drain attached, I had to use a bucket to capture the water. See links in the description below. Like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to check us out on social media. And thanks for watching.